Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Finance budget public hearing for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. Welcome to tonight's public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2026-27 budget. There are two items on our agenda for this evening: the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2026-27 budget, which will include presentations on both the school and the town budgets, and public forum, where the public will have an opportunity to address the Board of Finance and comment on the proposed budgets for up to a maximum of 3 minutes. As you can all see, we are in a hybrid meeting format with members of the public both here in person and joining us virtually through Zoom. Everyone on Zoom should be muted to limit any unintended noise distractions, and I would ask, if possible, all attendees on Zoom ensure that your name is shown on the screen and does not just say iPhone or just a phone number so that we can more easily identify you. When the presentations are complete and speaking opportunities arise, we will individually unmute those who wish to ask questions or comment, but ask that members of the public, should they want to speak, use the raise hand function to identify themselves, and I'll go over that a little bit more shortly. Before we begin the presentations, I'd like to make some brief opening remarks and provide an overview of tonight's format and the proceedings. First, I want to thank the Board of Selectmen and First Selectman Matt Hoey, the Board of Education, Superintendent Dr. Paul Freeman, and Board of Education Chair Dr. Katie Balistraci, town and school administration and staff, department heads, and to the hundreds of volunteers who participate on our town commissions and boards and have worked on these budgets for the last 6 months. If you are in attendance tonight in person, virtually on Zoom, or watching at home at a later time, I want to thank you on behalf of the Board of Finance for listening and being part of the budget process, whether through active or passive participation. This hearing is specifically for Guilford residents and community members to become educated and informed on what is contained in these budgets, how your money is being spent, and how these budgets will affect all of our bottom lines. Since October, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education have been developing these budgets, and the Board of Finance has been part of several meetings and workshops with both boards since November. The presentations tonight were also presented to the Board of Finance at our last meeting on February 12th, and we are not only aware of the content of these budgets, we have been asking thoughtful questions over time over the last 3 weeks as well. We will have a chance during our Thursday night budget workshop and possibly tonight to ask further questions and details about these budgets, but tonight is focused on the Guilford community who may have questions before the Board of Finance considers the budgets to move forward to voters at our town meeting on Tuesday, April 7th, and at referendum on Tuesday, April 21st. Our format for tonight will be as follows. The presentation of the proposed Board of Education fiscal year 2026 and 27 budget will be made by Superintendent Dr. Paul Freeman and Board of Education Chair Dr. Katie Balistraci. Upon completion of the presentation, we will allow the public in attendance to ask questions by raising either your physical or your virtual hand. And if in person, please come to the front, state your name and address for the record, and be as clear and concise with your question as possible so all of the microphones in the room can pick you up. As I learned last month, it can be a little bit difficult if you don't speak up. If you are virtual, please be sure that your name is clearly shown in your Zoom box. We will unmute you and for the record state your name, address, and be as clear and concise as well with your question. If there are minimal public questions, there will be an opportunity for Board of Finance members to ask questions. I'd like to just remind my colleagues, as I do every year, that the Board of Finance workshop on Thursday will allow ample time for questioning. After the Board of Education presentation, the presentation of the proposed town fiscal year 2026-27 budget and revenue projections will be made by First Selectman Matt Hoey. And upon completion of the presentation, we will follow the same format as noted earlier for public questions. After both presentations have been made and the question and answer period is complete, I will summarize the night and set the stage for Thursday's workshop deliberations. We will end the night with public forum to allow members of the public to address the Board of Finance regarding the budgets presented. Again, all speakers must state their name, address, and limit comments to no more than 3 minutes. Before I start the presentation, I did want to just mention that there were several letters that I just opened up I used to say board pack, but it's on board, And there's a few letters in here that are going to be read into record as well. So I want to make sure that those get in. I printed a couple, but there's a few new ones that just came through. So we will address those and read them in the record of public forum. So with that, I'd like to begin with the presentation of the proposed Board of Education fiscal year 2026-27 budget with Superintendent Dr. Paul Freeman and Board of Education Chairwoman Dr. Katie Bell-Stracey. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we are here tonight. Whoops, first we'll need to get it all set up here.
I just need permission to share.
Okay.
Thank you.
All set? We're here tonight to present the Board of Education budget for the 2026-2027 academic year. Brief history of how we got here. The Guilford Public Schools Administration have been working on this budget since the beginning of this current academic year. As the Board of Education does every year, in October, we held a public forum before we had a budget that allows the community to come to the board and make particular requests about things they'd like to see in the budget. We then proceeded with public meetings that we have with the Board of Finance as the budget really starts to take form. And at the beginning of January, Dr. Freeman presented a draft budget to us. We then held 2 public forums at the end of January. These allow the public to come to the Board of Ed and comment specifically on the budget that is now in front of them. And we then deliberated over several meetings and voted to bring forth this budget. I have been on the board for 14 years. I don't know that I have ever had quite the challenging task that we have had in this process, given the pressures on the budget that we're experiencing this year. You will hear tonight from us about cost drivers that include medical benefits for the second or third year in a row. That is creating a significant increase in our budget. Salaries is a cost driver. Like many of you in your homes, electricity is a big cost driver. So you're going to hear about some of the cost drivers that are really impacting this budget. You're going to hear about some pretty significant and careful position reductions that Dr. Freeman made after the budget was kind of formed among the departments within Guilford Public Schools. And then you're going to hear about further reductions that the Board of Education took upon receiving that budget, which together total over $1.2 million of reductions since that original budget. I am simply going to say now, and will repeat at the end, that as challenging as this has and may continue to be, I am honored to be representing Guilford Public Schools. We are committed to maintaining the excellence in education that we have delivered for years. We are committed to always looking for areas of improvement and ways to support student improvement, to support student potential and student success. And we hope to kind of provide all of you with the detail that you need to see the energy, time, and commitment and resources needed to maintain that level of quality. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Freeman to present some of the details.
Thank you, Dr. Bell-Stracey. And thank you, members of the Board of Finance, for allowing us to make this presentation again. I will start without going into much detail, but to remind the board and to remind the community that the budget each year that the Board of Education puts together is a value-based document. It is a budget that is built first upon our portrait of the graduate and the competencies that we expect all of our students to develop across 13 years in our schools. It is built upon an annual statement of priorities and initiatives that really boil down, remind us that we build a budget every year that focuses on providing a physically and emotionally safe environment, staffed by the highest professional educators to allow us to create academically challenging learning environments. It is built on a series of budget assumptions which again highlight the importance of our learning mission, but the importance of providing safe environments and doing so through a budget process that expects creativity before we request new or additional resources. And it's built on enrollment. Every year we are sensitive to looking at the students who are in front of us. Approximately 80% of the budget that we will present tonight is absorbed into human costs, the salaries and the benefits that are associated with employees in the district. And so we very carefully consider enrollment, and we staff for the enrollment numbers that we have in front of us. And while the district is projected to be down 31 students this year, you can see that significantly the elementary level is experiencing the greatest reduction in students. We also are very aware that we expect to provide a return on investment to our community. And so every year we have been sharing these two numbers with you. They are the two broadest, most aggregate numbers that we can draw from the state of Connecticut. The Accountability Index is a measure that the state of Connecticut applies to all schools in the state. It boils school performance down to a score between 1 and 100. It's based on 12 different indicators. If you take those results and distribute them across a percentile distribution for all schools in the state, Guilford performs in the 91st percentile. When you compare that to Guilford's cost per pupil expenditure, we spend at the 55th percentile, but we perform at the 91st percentile. We recognize that as a significant return on investment, and we take pride in that. We know that we expect not to come in asking to change our per pupil expenditure to land within the top 10% of the state. We don't want to spend with the top 10% of other school districts in the state, but we want to continue performing at that level. And the budget that we will share with you tonight will achieve that. So the details of this budget is that we are before the Board of Finance tonight asking you to move forward to referendum a Board of Education approved budget of $79,030,359. This is an increase over the current budget year of $4,646,769, a percent increase of 6.25%. To put that into a historical context, it is the largest single increase that the Board of Education has come forward asking of this town. And we will talk about why in a few moments, but it's important to note, we know that this is a big ask. We know that this is a significant investment for the town of Guilford. We don't think there's any more important investment than the children in the schools of the Guilford community. So we recognize the magnitude of this request. And we understand the importance of this request, and we bring it forward tonight hoping to provide detail to encourage both the Board of Finance and the town to support this request. I have talked with this board in the past about the different periods we've gone through as a school system. When I first joined the town of Guilford, we were seeing budgets that came in annually around 2.5% or 3%. We then went through a 6-year period where we did not see a single budget increase of over 2%. We saw some that were closer to the 1% mark in that period. And we are now, post-COVID, in a different era. We are seeing more significant budget requests come forward, and that is not unique to Guilford Public Schools. School districts across the state have been asking for and seeing increases like we have requested and received in the last 4 or 5 years because the cost of doing this work is increased. We're seeing student need increase, we're seeing costs increase, we're seeing school bus driver shortages, and we are seeing teacher shortages. And that is driving up the cost associated with continuing to provide that service and that return on investment. I do want to note that every year we work to control these costs and we look to identify and leverage efficiencies in the budget that we bring forward. So the single greatest efficiency in this year's budget is we are recognizing the exterior impacts on this budget, and therefore this budget comes forward with very few requests for new investment, for new programming, or for new initiative. This budget, and my 15 years in the Guilford Public Schools, I believe it's the 16th budget that I've participated in preparing. It is the closest thing to a maintenance budget that we have ever brought forward. In addition to that, this budget includes reduced staffing positions, specifically in the classroom teaching areas, and we'll talk to that more specifically moving forward. This budget is built on a significant reduction on special education tuition costs. We continue to keep more of our neediest Guilford students in the Guilford schools. That allows us to provide them with better services in their home neighborhood. It also allows us to keep costs down, and we'll speak more to that special education reduction that we see this year. There are very minimal equipment purchases in this budget, and again, I need to acknowledge the teachers and the principals at the building and classroom levels because there are minimal materials, supplies, even textbook purchases in this budget as we move forward. Just to provide a visual, we have been tracking those special education expenses. There's a balance that we try to achieve between the cost of outplacing students in tuitioned outplacements and the associated transportation costs versus the costs of keeping those students in locally. And so we have been tracking that for you. The blue line shows you what we project and what we have budgeted in years going back. The red line shows you the actual expenditures, and the green line shows you the trend that we've been experiencing. What you notice for the past 4, 5, 6 years is that we have not been able to eliminate the variability in special education spending, but we have shortened the wave. We have tightened the variability that we are experiencing. We've actually had a few years where we came in under budget in the last 4 or 5 years in special education. We anticipate to be under budget again this year, which accounts for that reduction, the drop-off that you see at the end there visually. The real story of this budget is once again the outside cost drivers. And so rather than investments that we are choosing to make, rather than new programmatic initiatives that we are proposing to bring forward, the drivers in this year's budget fall into 5 specific categories. The first being our medical increase. And so we've talked about this at this board's last meeting. Joe Spurgeon was here to talk with all the boards and the community about the impact of medical insurance. We insure our employees. We need to respond to the increased costs that are based on our own experience. And this year, we're seeing medical costs go up close to $2.6 million. It is unusual when we provide cost drivers to see the medical increase be larger than the salary increase. Every year, our employees, we work with 6 different unions and associations with our employees. We have contracts. Those include contracted increases. And when 80% of that budget is dedicated to salaries, well, about 68% goes to salaries. There's another 12% roughly that goes to benefits. We would like to see the salary increase be what's driving the budget each year. That's not what's happening this year. The medical increase is significant enough that it significantly outstrips the salary increase. That being said, the salary increase is significant. Again, we are experiencing teacher shortages across the state of Connecticut. In order to remain competitive, we must and should pay our teachers a competitive salary so that we will continue to keep the best teachers in the state in our Guilford classrooms. But salaries are going up approximately $1.7 million. Transportation, this is a combination of both regular bus transportation and some special education bus transportation, is going up nearly $400,000 this year. Electricity is going up approximately $370,000. And then again, those contracted services, the services that we provide to some students with specific needs to be able to keep them in district is going up approximately $250,000 this year. The tuition offset is significantly larger than that. I'll show you that in just a slide or two. But these 5 cost centers, these 5 cost drivers come in together at 5.2, nearly $5.3 million. That in itself is a 6.68% increase to this budget. I will remind the community and the board here that our budget is only going up $4.6 million. We have found other places to make reductions in order to offset these 5 cost drivers. But that is why we're still coming in at a 6.25% increase request this year. We've talked about medical quite a bit, but again, just as a reminder, we went through a period of 6 years where medical costs went down 5 out of 6 years. This board renegotiated medical benefits with all of our bargaining units. We restructured the medical plans. We have had employees make larger contributions to their medical plans, and we were seeing some good experience. And for a 6-year period, we were watching our medical costs trending in the right direction. In the last 5 years, that has turned around. In the last 5 years, we're seeing higher expenditures because our employees are drawing more from those medical benefits. Our experience has just been higher. You will see that last year, for the first time, we sort of got back to the spending levels of 2016-17, but this year we outstripped those. So we have seen increases in the last 4 out of the 5 years around that medical benefit that we provide. This is the investment slide. I've never shared an investment slide with this board or this community that had so much white space in it. There are only 2 new positions that we are requesting this year. There are no new programmatic changes that we are requesting this year. The ask this year is that we need to add a part-time position to the pre-K, the pre-kindergarten sections that we offer. That is driven exclusively by enrollment. We're watching our pre-K numbers increase. Some years ago, they were in the mid-20s. They are now in the low 50s. So we need to add a section. We need a half-time position to be able to build that out. Additionally, in this budget, we are requesting 1 additional special education coordinator. This is a 10-month administrative position that will help to manage and administer the special education needs, specifically at the elementary level. And to detail the rationale for that request just a little bit more. In the last several years, we have seen special education identification rates in Guilford change from about 12% a couple years ago to about 14% this year. We are now projecting to close this year with about 16% of our student population identified as having special needs. In addition to the increasing population, we are seeing students with more significant needs that we are continuing to hold in our Guilford Public Schools. To support that student growth, that growth in that area. Now again, remember, our overall population is declining, but our special education population is increasing. In order to support those students and their needs, in the past 5 years, we have added 11.5 teaching positions as well as 13.5 paraprofessional positions to support those students and their needs at the classroom level. What we haven't built out is the administrative support for those students, for those additional teachers, and for their families. Just as an illustration of that, a special education coordinator works with the teachers, the programs, the students, and the families. One important component of that is the facilitation of PPT meetings. At In the current structure, we currently have 3 special education coordinators, one at the elementary, one at the middle, and one at the high school level. Our coordinators at both the middle and high school levels last year facilitated approximately 300 PPTs, planning and placement team meetings. These are parent meetings where we talk about our students' progress and design the individual educational plan for those special education students. We meet a minimum of once a year for every student. Oftentimes, we meet multiple times a year for students. In the earliest grades, when students are just beginning to evidence their needs, we often have multiple meetings where we're first assessing and then identifying the students' needs and then working to build out those plans. At the elementary level last year, our elementary coordinator facilitated over 500 PPTs, not the 300 at the middle or the high school level, but 500. And that's just one responsibility of that coordinator. This budget would add a second PPT coordinator at the elementary level where our students are youngest, where our parents are still getting to know their child and their learning differences, and where we spend the most time supporting them. 2 coordinators at the elementary level would allow each of those coordinators to support 2 of our 4 elementary schools as well as 1 of our 2 district-wide special education programs. I have mentioned more than once this evening already that our tuition cost is decreasing. Our tuition cost is decreasing by $648,000 this year. So the less than $200,000 that we are looking to invest back into local special education staffing is more than offset by the decrease that we net by sending fewer students out to tuitioned and outplaced settings. At the beginning of her comments, Dr. Balistraci mentioned the reductions that have already been applied to this budget. When I shared this slide with this board last time that I was here, I referred to the investments deferred. There's a whole list of things that we would have liked to have seen on that investment slide this year. We were looking to add additional other staffing positions, math intervention teachers, data analyst positions, speech and language pathologists. We were looking to extend the workday of our paraprofessionals so that the adults who support our students with special needs are actually here for the same school day that the students that they support are here. Currently, the student day is longer than our paraprofessional work day. We were looking to extend the work year for some of our clerical positions to provide elementary principals with clerical support over the summer. And there were a number of supply and textbook and equipment purchases that never got into the budget. So while I refer to everything on this slide as investments deferred, these were essentially the first round of cuts from the requests that the principals and the department heads made. Even after making these reductions, when we sat and looked at our budget, we recognized that our budget was too large to bring forward as an administrative team to the Board of Education. We made additional and significant staffing reductions to this budget before we brought it forward to the Board of Education. The superintendent's budget that I brought forward includes the reduction of 8 classroom teaching positions and the reduction of 1 district-wide clerical position. It's really important to note that those teaching reductions still keep class sizes within the Board of Education recommended class sizes. 1 of these reductions falls at the high school, 2 of these reductions fall at the middle level, and 6 of these reductions will fall at the elementary level where we're seeing the most significant enrollment reduction. It was really important to make clear to this board and to the community that these reductions, while significant and troubling, do not run class sizes up beyond the expected, the experienced, and the recommended class sizes of the Board of Education. But these reductions totaled $566,000 before we as a leadership team brought a budget to the Board of Education. The budget that we brought to the Board of Education came in at about 7.13%. When we delivered that budget to the Board of Education, through their deliberations, the Board of Education made an additional reduction of $654,542 further, reducing a custodial position, reducing professional development or professional learning dollars, further reducing that textbook line. We reduced the tuition line even further than it had been in the first draft of the budget that we brought forward. We reduced site improvements. Site improvements are those small dollar but important preventative maintenance projects that we engage in every year, where we want to spend small dollars early rather than waiting for things to fall into disrepair and spend more dollars later in the process. This is the first year that we have moved backwards on site improvements in some time. And we were able to reduce our transportation budget further than the initial draft that we brought forward. When you combine the reductions that I made from the initial draft with these reductions made by the Board of Education, and Dr. Balistraci noted this number at the beginning, that is a $1.2 million reduction. That doesn't include any of the decisions made around investments deferred. Just in cuts, we're talking about $1.2 million of reductions. Each year I like to show what that looks like across the district. So in staffing, again, we are a people-intensive organization. Most of the money that we request from this town and spend is on the employees in the district. So this year we see a net of administration increasing by 1, and paraprofessionals and clerical positions increasing by 4. Last year, we reduced 5 paraprofessional positions in the budget, and we have needed to put them back in this year. We simply can't, we've not been able to meet the needs of students at that lower number. So while we're going up in 1 administrative position and in paraprofessional positions, we are going down in the teaching positions and in the custodial position that I've noted before. And at this point, I want to pause just for a moment and say, there is no bigger supporter of the teachers in Guilford, I think, than me. I know that it is difficult for the teachers in this budget season to watch the presentations that I make where I talk about these teacher reductions. And in fact, the Board of Education has been asked why the reductions are falling most heavily in the teacher ranks and why it seems that every year reductions fall in the teacher ranks. And I want to answer that question publicly, and I think this visual to some degree helps. Teachers are the single largest number of employees that we employ. We only employ 8 nurses in the school system. We only employ 20 administrators, but we employ approximately 325 teachers next year in the school system. They're the largest number of employees that we bring on board. They are the employees whose positions are most directly related to that student enrollment that I mentioned. And they're the most volatile number of positions. The teacher ranks in the past 15 years have seen a high of 331 positions and a low of 314 positions. This year, if we pass the budget as currently proposed with that reduction of 8 teaching positions, a net of 7.4, we will be at 325 teaching positions next year, significantly above the low of 314 and somewhat below the high of 331. Interestingly, it's exactly where we were back in 2010, 2011. The teaching ranks are fluid because our enrollment is fluid. And I've mentioned to this board in past years, and I referenced it a little bit tonight, we're seeing changing demographics. While our overall enrollment is decreasing, our special education portion of that enrollment is increasing. So over the last several years, we have seen reductions in classroom positions while we have seen increases in special education teaching positions, school psychologist positions, school social worker positions, in those support positions that are ancillary to the classroom but enormously important. It's interesting to me that the low of 314 and the high of 331 bookmark the investment of those last 5 years, where I noted that we have hired 11.5 special education teaching staff across the last 5 years. So this teacher reduction is significant. It is the last thing that I want to build into the budget, but it falls within the Board of Education recommended class sizes and it's responsive to those fluid needs that we see with student needs and with enrollment. The administrative staffing is very different. The administrative staffing over the same time period has seen a high of 20 and a low of 19. It has been 20 administrators for the last 10 years. If this budget moves forward and includes the increase of the special education coordinator that we're asking for, it will be the first time that administrative staffing has increased in 10 years. Now, that's partially a function of N. We have far fewer administrators than we do teachers, and therefore the staffing levels remain much more stable over time. So while we don't or can't as easily reduce administrative positions in difficult budget years, nor do we add or build up administrative positions when we have the opportunity because of other changes. As we have decreased classroom positions, we haven't invested those dollars into administrative positions. We've invested them into teaching positions. But it's important to note that more adults doesn't reduce the need for administration, it increases the need for administration. And again, I want to be really clear. The special education request in this budget is specific to the special education programming and population at the elementary level. We're not adding an additional assistant principal or superintendent. We're looking to support the special education programming. And I wanted to be able to make this part of a public presentation that I know teachers in Guilford are watching. It's just important that we be this clear. Which brings me to the conclusion, the justification for this budget that we're bringing forward this year is because of those medical increases. It is because of the salary increases, transportation increases, electricity increases, and other various non-discretionary cost increases that we are experiencing. The growth of this budget happens despite the significant reductions that we are making to staffing. We know that we can absorb those reductions, but we also know how significant those are. I want to note that we are also bringing forward a relatively modest bonding request this year. Adams absolutely needs to have a portion of the roof replaced. There's a portion primarily over the gymnasium area that is close to 40 years old, and anybody who has students in that Adams gym sees the buckets that we have out every time that it rains or every time that the snow thaws. Regardless of what the long-term plan for Adams is moving forward, that portion of the roof needs to be replaced. That's a $1.5 million bonding request. We have engaged in a facility study this year with Fryer and Associates. We will have a more fulsome presentation on that study and a 10-year facility plan and calendar that we will present. But one of the earliest responses is that they have identified some safety concerns, particularly around outdoor areas, and we want to begin addressing those immediately rather than waiting to build them into a 10-year plan. That's a very small request at $118,000. There is architectural and engineering dollars for future work of $172 for a total bonding request of $1,830,609 that will accompany our operational request moving forward. And then I just want to finish again by maybe I'll just turn that over to you to finish there.
I can do that. Really, it circles back to what is Guilford Public Schools? What are we investing in? Who are we investing in? And what is the evidence that that investment is worth the resources that we put to it? We are, as Dr. Freeman noted, in the top 10% of schools across the district in the State Accountability Index. We are, however, only in the top 55th percentile, in the top 50th percentile of spending. So we take this very seriously. We have always prioritized trying to be fiscally careful and thoughtful, recognizing the town support for this district for our students, but invested in and taking our responsibility as stewards of their education quite seriously. We can point to the academics. We can also point to where many of our community members see our students on the stage and in the theater productions, choral productions, band productions, athletic fields. where our kids go to college, the jobs they go to, or trade school, military, other really successful endeavors. We will continue to want to look for areas to improve, always supporting our students to reach their potential, but recognizing that this school district has reached the level of quality that they have, in part because of the professionals that work for us, that we invest in, but also because of the town support that is provided in order for us to do that. We recognize that 6.25% is a significant increase. We've noted the cost drivers, so we hope our community recognizes how much of that is out of our control this year. We did, as a Board of Education, once Dr. Freeman delivered a draft of this budget to us at 7.13%, spent a lot of time deliberating how to reduce it, and got it down to 6.25%, and were able to avoid more than one additional reduction in staffing. We will not be that successful with further cuts. There will be more positions on the line. It was really important to us to try to avoid that as much as possible because of the impact on the school and on students. But again, it's not clear we will be much more successful if a significant additional reduction is requested. I do thank you for listening, for your continued support of Guilford Public Schools, and we certainly are open to support any Q&A that happens now.
Dr. Balistraci, Dr. Freeman, thank you. We're going to, at this point, well, first and foremost, I want to thank Linda Trudeau.
Well deserved. Thank you.
And her staff in the finance department regarding answering many questions. I know with input from the chair and from the superintendent, but still compiling the questions that we've had, and the Board of Ed. The Board of Education's asked a lot of questions as well. But I do want to thank Linda and her staff. At this point, I want to open up to any questions while our speakers and representatives from the Board of Education are here from the public. I'm going to just remind everyone about name, address. I can't see all of the people that are on the screen, but I see there's about 24 people on, including one of our Board of Finance members, I should note, who's listening in, Rob Federici. So at this point, I'll open up to any questions. Please raise your hand or come on up, and we will entertain questions at this time.
I don't see any hands on.
I always give it a few seconds because then someone all of a sudden says, you know, maybe I will ask this question. Go on. I know you're thinking. You're thinking about it.
Looks like Catherine Natalia to speak.
Okay. Yes. We see your virtual hand and your image. So, Catherine, name, address, and the questions that you have.
Hi, thank you very much. Catherine Natalia, 60 Wilbur's Lane, Guilford. I wanted to know if this budget does not pass, and I really hope it does, but if it doesn't and the board has to cut additional teaching positions, how is the board going to decide from what level those teaching positions will be eliminated? Thank you.
If we are reduced further and have to look at positions, I do want to note that teaching positions are one place we might have to look, but we may have to look at other positions. We have paraprofessionals, we have custodial staff, we have other staff. So I do want to be clear, and certainly in our deliberations, when we voted on the budget that we brought forward tonight, we looked across several positions in different areas in Guilford Public Schools for consideration. Looking at further teaching positions will have to happen within a couple of parameters. Certainly one is and Dr. Freeman referred to this, the Board of Education recommended class sizes. We find those to be really important parameters by which we want to make sure that we are providing a teacher-student ratio that is a reasonable ratio. So we will need to keep that in mind. And of course, as we look at that, we're basing most of that on our current student numbers, which are fairly stable, but not completely stable. Families move into the district, families move out. In higher grades, middle school and high school, sometimes class sizes are less of an issue, and we're looking at, I'm making this up, this is not a real example, but the number of French classes or the number of specific history classes. But let's note that when we start limiting classes, which often is not then the removal of a history teacher position, but sometimes is 20% of a history teacher position or 10% another, what we're doing is we are reducing the options that our high school students have, and reducing not only the options, but adding a challenge to scheduling. So if we offer, and again, completely made up example, but if we offer 2 AP history classes and have to reduce to 1, that means that there are a number of students who couldn't fit their schedule for the first one, but could fit it for the second one, and now are limited. It's a challenging question. I've given you a long-winded answer, but I hope it provides you some sense of the kinds of things that we would need to look at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. Maxwell, I will let you say your own name. I'll just say Maxwell, so go ahead.
Great. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Max DiGataldo, 135 Highwoods Drive. I will just start by saying, broadly on a personal level, I support the Board of Ed budget. I think that our kids in the town need good teachers, and our teachers deserve the medical and salaries to live a good life, a dignified life. So I don't really want it to go into the range of starting to reduce teachers' medical or head count or things like that. The one comment I wanted to talk to was actually around the bonding request for the roof, and at risk of putting my foot in my mouth because I am not a roofer, so I might say something stupid, but I just had my roof done last year, and my roof is about 2,000 square feet total area, and it costs about 20 grand, so that's about $10 per square foot. I went on the GIS, and the Adams roof is something like 80,000 square feet. So I just said, oh, let's pretend it's a partial roof replacement. We're doing half of that. So 40,000 square feet at 1.5 million comes out to $36 per square feet. So I know that not all roofing projects are the same, and not all roofing materials are the same. And I'm not denying that the school needs a new roof. I'm sure it does. I believe that. I'm just pointing out that it seems to be 3 to 4 times more expensive per roof area than my personal house's roof. So I just wanted to bring that up. And again, I might not know what I'm talking about, but I just wanted to point it out and see whether that dollar amount for that roof was scrutinized, and if we got competitive bids and things like that. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Max, that's not a silly question. I'm sure a lot of people have that question, why the roof is so much per square foot versus, listen, I hear it all the time. So I'm going to let.
Well, I was actually going to say that I believe our chair knows more about this than I do. So it has not been bid yet. So the budget numbers are prepared by Mr. Gurnham in our office. He bases them on knowing what the competitive bids are roughly going to be. The A&E number that I mentioned before allows him to get engineering and to get architectural advice before they go out. I think a partial answer is that it's a wholly different roof. The roof is primarily a flat roof with completely different materials. It's very different than what most of our home roofs would be. We also need to follow all state guidelines and mandates around the type of labor that is involved in the roofing project. But then that is a very high level, very broad answer. You know way more about that than I do.
Throw it back at me now.
Happy to. Nothing makes me happier.
No, what I will tell you is that, so first of all, there is a process that the pricing on any of these projects go through. It goes through the Standing Building Committee. The Standing Building Committee through Cliff Gurnham, the facilities director for the school system, goes to design professionals, a cost estimator, goes through that process to come up with the number that is basically what the roof would cost. And whether you take it by square foot, a shingled roof on a house is much different than a 3-ply roof where you're putting rubber membrane down. So, and a lot of times it's hard to make that comparison. I will tell you that something that has come up very recently, and I'm going to look to the building committee and also look at our first selectman that came up very recently. I don't know how often we go after state reimbursement. There is and I'm going to, just for record, the firm that I work for does a lot of school projects. We're going to leave it at that. There's state reimbursement you can get, but there's a lot of regulations that you need to meet and a lot of restrictions. It is something that maybe we could look into to see if a partial roof replacement would meet those requirements. It is very challenging is not the right word. There's like I said, there's a lot of restrictions to it. You have to meet several requirements, but it is something that probably should be looked at. Whether it's a $1.8 million project, a $180,000 project, or a $18 million project, we should be looking at state reimbursement. The impact to Guilford, by the way, for that, we're talking somewhere in the low 30% reimbursement on that.
Correct.
So, if you're spending $1 million on something and you're, having to then go out and bond 700,000, you're still bonding 700,000, but you're getting 300, but at least it's something, right? So that is something where I think is very prudent for us to look at in the Standing Building Committee. But your question, I would love to say that roof projects years ago were a lot less, but the escalation in construction costs is anywhere from 25 to 30%, probably over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm looking at the audience, I know people that are in the construction fields, and they're all shaking their heads. So that's my somewhat long-winded answer.
Thank you for your help.
You're welcome. I do see John. Please.
Hello, it's John Phelan from 323 North River Street. I'm in Florida right now waiting for the snow to melt so I can get into my driveway. But back to the school budget. I was curious if the Board of Education included any revenue for next year from the new federal tax credit of $1,700. I estimate that it will generate about $8 million to the budget for education. The credit begins on January 1st, 27. I'm just curious if they thought about this credit. It would eliminate most of the cuts.
First of all, I would like to say, John, thank you for your letter to the Board of Finance, which we did receive, which I was going to read in the record, but you kind of did it for us. So thank you for that. I guess I don't have to read that in the public forum later, because you've just asked a question. So to the response to that question?
I believe this is in reference to the voucher program and
It's not a voucher.
It's a tax credit. It's a federal tax credit.
I'll just read the beginning of it, and John, if you want to elaborate, you can. This is your time to. The U.S. Congress recently enacted a new federal education tax credit, not a deduction of up to $1,700, $3,400 for joint filers if they donate to public or private K through 12 schools to pay for education expenses, including tuition for special education, books, and transportation that are included in our town budget for the upcoming school year. That was the first paragraph of a couple.
So it's my understanding that the state of Connecticut needs to approve this and that they have yet to approve this. This is not something that we could reasonably anticipate for our budget at this time. This is a state decision long before it becomes a local decision.
Yes, and it was mentioned that the governor and the state would have to approve it.
Yeah.
Through the legislative process.
That's right.
It's got to go through the process.
Right,
yes.
and so we
He
could.
was aware of that, so
Right,
yeah.
but no, so we could not build a pending.
can't do
right,
something,
no.
yeah.
We can't budget on the assumption that something like this will pass the legislation and become available for July 1.
It would be a
of
risk. It would be a large risk.
Yes.
It
Now,
has to pass and the governor would have to sign it.
Right.
So
Perhaps that would be appropriate for the town to recommend to our legislators to ask the governor. There's no strings attached to the money. All the governor has to do and the state legislature has to just say, we would like to participate. 24 states have already agreed to participate because it is a no-coster.
This is a teachers' union issue, whether it's required.
they'd have to go, you just
Well-
have to go to the finance committee.
Yeah, I think there's an educational component to the argument or the decision to be made before it's not a strictly financial decision. I think that there are some educational repercussions to this that I think Connecticut would want to discuss thoughtfully. And I would be happy to talk to any town leaders or our state legislators. And I have had some conversation with our state legislators about whether or not they should be supportive of this proposal.
Okay, so it's been heard of, but it's not something that we should include in the budget because of the risk of, we don't know if it's going to happen.
Very
Yeah.
premature.
Yeah.
And we're just one of 169 municipalities in Connecticut that would need to do the same thing and encourage it, so.
Yeah.
No, I've talked to our state senator, reps and senators, they're very aware of it.
Yeah.
It's a tax issue.
All right.
Credit, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. John, I thank you
Thank you
very
for the
much
question.
for both
Absolutely.
submitting the
Great
question
question.
and being on tonight. I appreciate it on behalf of all of us. Anyone else wishing to address the USA Board of Finance? The Board of Education on a question. And again, so far we've had questions. We'll have public forum for comment, but questions directly. Anything else on Zoom?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay. In the audience here? As I say every year, any burning questions from the Board of Finance that they have to know right now? Can you get a copy of that PowerPoint?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
You, actually,
We have
that's,
to.
Yeah, so.
didn't you add some?
There have been a couple revisions before tonight's presentation. I will update the one that we have on our website and send it proactively to all of you as well.
No, that's
Happy to.
Yeah, we would, yeah.
Happy
Absolutely
to.
would like to have that.
And we look forward to talking with you again Thursday night.
Possibly. Okay.
We'll be there.
I mean, I wouldn't
Maybe not. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Okay. We're going to move on to continue with the presentation of the proposed town fiscal year 2026-27 budget and revenue projections. First Selectman Matt Howitt.
Give Karen the control.
Doing a little PowerPoint switch now.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Brandon, look good.
Just,
Well,
just a little aside, there was, after a Park and Rec meeting last night, there were some problems with the video. So today, Tony Santarcangelo and Brendan worked to come up with a workaround so that we could still utilize this. So
The plan B is working on the charm,
It
so.
absolutely is. Right?
They're using a camera on that. Pretty good.
We ready? Great. Good evening. I can promise that the presentation hasn't changed dramatically since the last time you heard it, so if you want to take a quick nap, go ahead. Good evening. I'm pleased to present the Board of Selectmen budget for fiscal year 2026-27. Hard to believe those numbers are what they are. I want to thank my fellow board members and the department heads for all the work we have done together to craft this budget. In particular, Karen Quersha and Mary Jane Malavasi and Mitch Goldblatt have been really the architects of putting this thing together, and my sincere thanks and support. A copy of this presentation, along with detailed information about the services each of our departments provide, can be found on the town's website. And I encourage you to visit the website to better understand the breadth of services provided to you and your neighbors. And that document is loosely titled, it doesn't say it on the front, but is Your Tax Dollars at Work. And it talks about what takes place. It's laden with data points from our various department heads in terms of the services they provide, the numbers, and I encourage you to take a look at it because that really tells the story of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So this slide has been modified over the previous years because I added that one block in the middle. Pretty simply, what's the role of town government is to primarily, which is the foundation of most societies, public protection and safety. We're to maintain infrastructure and sustainability of our resources, provide town services that the community comes to appreciate, and to support the Board of Education. It's one of the reasons why we have a single budget vote in this town. And to ensure the quality of life for those of us, those residents, all of the residents, really. And then lastly, the new one is meeting community expectations. And what are those community expectations? And they can vary by household, they can vary by individual, they can vary by neighborhood, but they are traditionally varied, and it is hard for us to make sure we accomplish everything that folks expect us to do. We recently conducted a community survey through Zen City, a vendor that we utilize, designed to find out how we're doing, what people think about our community. The good news is the overall quality of life, 81% positive amongst those respondents. Overall safety, where's the chiefs? 86%, so even better than the overall quality of life. Cleanliness and maintenance, 85% positive. Park and rec amenities, 81%. Quality education, 79%. Availability of arts and culture, 74%. You see the trend. Sense of community, 68% positive, which I'm a little bit surprised at. Availability of senior and social services, 66% positive. But 57% of the respondents were satisfied with the overall quality services provided by the town. And to me, that says we have to do better. Whatever those expectations are, we need to understand them, and we need to adjust our service delivery goals and methodologies to meet those expectations. And we have to do better because the budget is a reflection of our values as a community. And Karen, next page, please. Our budget objectives and key factors don't change very often. Maintain a high level of services, and that is to try to gauge what those expectations are. It reflects our effort to meet the community expectations, and that's done through community input beyond those surveys that we did. There's an amazing thing about feedback. It usually winds up on my desk, and not all of it is positive. Some of it is about areas that we need to improve on. So we've reflected some of those needs and those changes in this budget. Our staffing levels, we're proposing 3 new positions in this budget. The first of which is, well, not first of which, but a planning and zoning permit tech, which will be shared by the health department. You'll see some data in this document that I just mentioned about the number of permits, the number, and also the corresponding revenue that we're driving as a result of the significant increase in state-required permitting conditions, visits, et cetera. So this is something that was in last year's budget. It did not survive the cuts that the Board of Finance asked for, but we're back again because we fully believe that this is something that is going to change a little bit the timeliness on how we deliver services, because that is effectively what we're going to try to get done here, is get the permits through the process in a more efficient manner. In our Public Works Department, last year and this year, we had a request for 2 new positions, one a new maintainer and one mechanic. And when we asked the commission and our department chair, if you got one of those, which one would you take? And the answer was the mechanic. And the reason for that is pretty simple. In 1996 or 1995, 96, we had 75 some odd plated vehicles that were roadworthy. And we had 5 mechanics working on those over that at that time. Today we have over 150 plated vehicles. Guess how many mechanics we have? 5. And the sophistication level of working on the equipment has gone up dramatically in that time. So I think there was actually 2 years ago a request for 2 mechanics, but we've included 1 because that will allow us to get our vehicles back out on the road in a more timely fashion, and so that we are not down equipment over longer periods of time. So the Board of Selectmen has felt that this is a very justified request, and we've included it in our recommendation this year. And the last is for town properties. We are already very thin in terms of taking maintenance of our properties, and with the acquisition or the donation of the Lathrop House back to the town, that requires some additional property maintenance and attention. So those are the 3 positions that are in our budget. We also are committed to continue to fund our pension and OPEB liabilities at actuarially recommended levels. And then this is something that the Board of Selectmen continues to be proud of. We continue to maintain the programs that assist particularly our elderly, the Elderly Tax Freeze Program. That program this year is anticipated to result in an additional $200,000 in lost taxes because of the freeze that goes to those seniors who qualify based on their income eligibility. And then we also, the town, expanded the tax relief program for veterans, which has the same effect in terms of decreased property taxes. And those taxes are spread across the balance of our community, and I find it hard to believe that most folks wouldn't recommend that we take care of our seniors and we take care of our veterans. And then we have continued investments in information technology, and that's a pretty good-sized budget driver this year. Karen, next slide, please. When I first looked at this number, it scared me. We've never presented, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've never seen the town come in with a number this high, but I'm not apologizing for it. And I don't think the Board of Selectmen is apologizing for it. And just so you know, this budget was passed out of the Board of Selectmen in a bipartisan fashion, even though it wasn't unanimous, but it was in a bipartisan fashion after significant amount of discussion about where it was, but let's not forget where it started because we made some significant changes to it on the way in. If you take a look at the three components of our budget, which we usually get laden with, it's a 6.15% increase, right around where you guys are. Just it's not, and not surprisingly, we have some of the same pressures, as we'll see in a minute. But this budget also reflects some changes that we're trying to restore the budget cuts that were imposed last year. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. Overtime budget last year, out of the $365,000 we were asked to cut, we went and took about $82,000 out of overtime in various departments. But guess what? There's only really 3 or 4 departments that we can go get that at. Fire, police, public works, and park and rec. Those are the big buckets. That's where the money is. Well, we're now living with the results, because budgeting is an art, not a science, and we're already over our overtime budget at Public Works by $77,000 based on this winter. As I think you know, we typically use either a 3 or 5 year rolling window in terms of previous expenses. Well, we haven't had a winter like this in I'd say 10 years. So we got caught. So you'll see some restoration. Not only we'll see some restoration to levels that were previously funded. Maintenance items are also up. Utilities, a significant increase in utilities. And here's where we're going to sing the same story as the Board of Education. Our medical is about a 16% increase. And let's not forget, part of that increase is the one-time funding mechanism that we used last year from the reserve, which was fully appropriate at the time, given where we were. But I think we always knew there was going to be a hurdle to overcome because we are not able to go to that same source once again. Good. Next slide, please. Right here, again, this is a little bit of discussion specifically where they are. The fire department, not to pick on the couple of chiefs that are in the back of the room, has an overall increase of 7.28%. But as the Board of Finance knows, $200,000 of that is part and parcel to a staffing model plan that the department provided to us earlier this year, just prior to, actually after the budget had started and actually had been put in a can. And it is a way to mitigate the cost and also to increase the service capacity on our medical calls. I think calling it a fire department might be a misnomer. It is a health department, because about 73% of the calls that come into the fire department are for medical purposes, EMS or EMT. And the model, there's also a document that is on our same website that talks in detail about the staffing proposal, the staffing model, and the cost is identified to be about $200,000. The first year a little bit more because there's some startup costs. And what they're planning to do is bring in part-time EMS or EMT providers to staff our third ambulance during the day, Monday through Friday, between basically 9 o'clock and 7 o'clock at night, which is where the predominance of calls come in. Those calls, when you get backed up, you get the second or third call, we can't deplete our firefighting staff, so we have to bring folks in on overtime or replacement salaries. And this is a way to mitigate the utilization and the increase in the replacement salaries, which we've all seen escalating over time. And also, we are staffing it with folks who are part-time. So we're not incurring the 40% uplift that is typical on full-time employees with health care and retirement benefits. But the good news, the silver lining is the fire department is committed to another $300,000 in revenue, ambulance revenue, as a result of this program. So as I think I've said before, in my life, I'd invest $200 to get $300, and I'd do that pretty much every day. So when you see the increase in our budget, $200,000 of that is offset on the revenue side by $300,000. So that's why we feel, the Board of Selectmen feels very comfortable and endorses this program. As you can see, some of the other increases, waste transfer station tipping fees and so forth, 11%. Information technology, we just recently migrated to Microsoft 365, where the world is going, because Microsoft is basically forcing everyone off of the old model and now onto a different license model that we've made that migration. Town properties, fire hydrants. That's one of the things that's up pretty significantly. I think the fire hydrants were up 9% or 10%, and we're still the rates still aren't fully determined. It could be even higher. It could be even higher. And I mentioned utilities. Utilities were up as well, 8.2%. So that. The next one down is the one that we just can't avoid, right? Total employee benefits, and that includes our health benefits as well. So when you have a budget item that is roughly 25% of your overall operating budget, and it increases by 14%, that's real numbers. It's okay if you're getting a 14% increase on a very small portion of your budget, but when it hits that number, we've got some problems. Next slide, please. You guys can't even see this. Well, so we'll skip over this. This is part of what we provided in the fire department staffing model, and it talks about the calls on a constant rise, and then it also, if you go to the next slide, Karen. It also talks about response times. And what the concern here is we're starting to see response times rise because of the significant number of calls that we're having bulked into a very tight window. And as you may recall, the SAFER grant was designed to give us the capacity to build a second fire station to significantly reduce the response times in North Guilford. And we can see those starting to tick up. So this is really a couple of things. One, provide better service, quicker service, but also take care of the equity in terms of response times for the residents in our community and the difference between North Guilford and the rest of Guilford. Next slide, Karen. All right, the red is 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You can see that's where the bulk of the EMS and EMT service calls are coming. All right. I know you can't read the actual time. So what is it? 79% is falling within that window. Yes. Right. So that's our. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's an ALS service, not a BLS. You're gonna both.
It can be both.
It can be both. Okay.
Good. All right, thank you. Next slide, Karen. All right, contrary to popular belief, we did make some reductions. Board of Selectmen in our operating budgets, much to the chagrin of some of the department heads, so many of them are on the call, and I thank you for helping us through this process. But we cut $876,000 out of the departmental operating budgets. The capital budgets, through a variety of ways, we cut $453, but when I say cut, we're not really cutting anything. We're defraying it. We're moving it off to another fiscal year or finding a different revenue source to pay for it. But it is a significant reduction. We have been trying to maintain, but more importantly, we've been trying to grow our pay-as-you-go capital expenditures. And we've been stuck right around $1 million for 3 years because when it comes time to make cuts, it's an easier place to go. And the challenge is we haven't indexed that number for inflation, which we really should be doing because every other aspect of our budget is indexed naturally for inflation as a result of the cost pressures that we get through inflation. So, we were able to take a little bit out of debt service because we changed the way we're going to apply some of the premiums that we get when we go to the market and bond. So in total, about 1.57 or almost $1.6 million reductions to the Board of Selectmen budget. And I think I could still go to a department head meeting and not get shot at. I think that's, well, maybe not, depends. Next, all right, here's where the increases in employee benefits come from, and I'll try to get this moving a little bit. Retirement plan contributions up 7%. Medical benefits 15 or nearly 16%. The OPEB trust contribution is up 119%, but that's because we all agreed several years ago to do the other post-employment benefits, and we talked about a laddering. And we knew it was going to gradually start to increase because this will eventually eliminate the pay-as-you-go for retirees' medical benefits, which I think is costing us about $900 to $1 million a year, roughly in that number. And this is similar to a pension fund, and we are maintaining the contribution levels that we laid out a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. Again, I said our capital budget is right around $1 million, and it goes to the typical places. Vehicles, predominantly police vehicles, and the uplift for those, as we're typically replacing 2 or 3 of those a year, and then an occasional staff car. Various equipment for the golf course, park and rec, various mowers and attachments, and also for firefighting gear for the fire department. Infrastructure is engineering, sidewalks, drainage projects at Public Works. Building maintenance, community center parking lot, police surveillance video update. And technology at the library, it's not very much, but it's $10,000, but it's a jump for Rob, and it is a way to continue to provide them with the most current technology. And then the field, land, and lake improvements. Lake Quantapug, weed control, irrigation at Adams Field, splash pad piping has to be replaced, well water at Nut Plains Park, and a Bittner Park pump upgrade, among some of those things. Nothing really exciting or sexy or big. It's just taking care of the things that we need to do every year. Nick, there's the trend that I wish we could break in terms of capital funding, and we really should be, that curve should be going, there should be a rise over time, but at least we're maintaining where we are over the last couple of years. And again, I say we would love to be able to index that for inflation over time. Next slide, Karen. Here are the components of the bonded debt service. The new high school still is absorbing 35% or 36% of our total debt services. The Board of Education is at 32%, and the town at 32% for our various projects, not the major capital project. This is the care and feeding of our buildings and our facilities over time. And again, we talked about the use of premium credits to keep that number flat with last year. So, as I said, when you had a quarter of your budget, your operating budget, with a big increase, this also helps because you've got 20% of your total budget does not have an increase. All right, next, this is Mary Jane's favorite slide. And for those in the audience, those paying attention, this really, the blue shaded area is the Guilford High School debt. And we've known for some time, I remember Mike had a slide like this when he was chief cheerleader for getting the new high school passed, that over time, we would eventually pay that high school down. And you can see over the next couple of years, it's going to start to drop in more precipitously. That's when we're going to be able to start to afford some other significant capital projects and not increase that, hopefully not increase our total debt retirement schedule and payments. Next slide. There is good news on the revenue side. I think our total revenue, our local revenues are up by almost $1 million. And you can see interest income is projected to go up. Building permits, and those are all the permits between the building and other local. Those increases are part of what I talked about with the permit tech to be able to facilitate getting that stuff through our system a little better. And as I mentioned, the EMS revenue of $300,000. Thank you very much to the Fire Commission. Again, spend $200 to get $300. I'm willing to make that bet every day. We have a little increase in the state grants because of a funding change that happened after our budget was passed last year, when the legislature passed their their budget in June. There was additional funds available, so we are benefiting from them this year in the current operating budget. And leadership has indicated to me that it will stay in there for this year. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Board of Ed and ECS state grants. We touched on that a little earlier. I will be, tomorrow at 10:30, I will be with the Senate leadership at a press conference where they are announcing a bill that is going to increase the foundation level for ECS payments. The foundation level is the base level that every student in the state is entitled to get in terms of ECS. That hasn't changed since 2013, 2012, 2013. So talking about indexing things for inflation. I also want to just mention one thing, and I've spent a lot of time in Hartford advocating for changes to the ECS formula and changes to the excess cost formula, the special ed stuff. That's where everybody gets killed. Across the state, there needs to be a statewide rectification of the fact that we all buy from the same services, pay the same prices, but communities like Guilford are getting 20% of what some of the other communities around the state are in terms of reimbursement on the ECS stuff. There is a socio-economic weighting to the ECS formula, the excess cost formula, and that needs to change. So I've done a lot of work trying to affect some of that. I'm not going to take credit for anything I'm saying. My voice has been with a lot of other voices on that side. And let me just give you a real life example. In 1996, yes, I still have that spreadsheet, Mike. We got about $3 million in funding from the state of Connecticut for ECS. That represented about 12% of our Board of Education budget. The projected number in this budget is $1.7 million. $1.3 million in real money, less than we got over 20 years ago, 30 years ago, excuse me. And the percentage of what it's going to cover is 2.2%. So while we are a moderately wealthy community, and I'm a redistributive tax policy person, there has to be some fairness. So I'm thrilled to see that the legislature, the leadership, is finally going to address this issue. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Net grant list growth, we had some this year as opposed to last year we didn't. It was nominal. Before the adjustments, it was about, 0.73%. And then every year we make adjustments based on things like the Lilly Tax Freeze program, the veterans programs, et cetera, Board of Assessment Appeals. So there is some growth, and that is a heck of a lot better than it was last year. And that growth adds to the anticipated increase in tax revenues against our old base. So that's it. Thank you very much for hearing me for this presentation. The annual town budget meeting is April 7th after the Board of Finance gets through with their deliberations in the next couple of days. And then let's not forget about the budget referendum on April 21st, 2026. Thank you again for allowing me to make this presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Well, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Purcell. I want to echo what Matt said about thanking Mary Jane and the staff. I see Mitch here. Karen, who's controlling the slides. So again, thank you to all of you also for questions and actually taking a few of our phone calls, I'm sure, as well, on some questions. With that, I will entertain any public questions for the town budget, either virtually or in the room. Go. Anyone? Questions?
I'm going to make Mary Jane and Mitch answer.
Yeah. Questions online, virtually? Geez, Matt, I guess it just means you did it real. Anybody here in person?
I have a quick question for the...
Burning question, go ahead. No, it's okay, fine.
Is Guilford responsible for all of the ambulance transport from Goose Lane to New Haven? Or it is shared, okay.
No,
All right.
no, only emergent, so only like where somebody would call 911 from emergency room to emergency room.
Okay, all right. Good.
I have one quick question. The ECS grant that you mentioned up at the state legislation, that probably won't impact this budget cycle, I'm
There
guessing.
is significant pressure to get something done this year, to start the process. My understanding is they want to adjust the base to some degree, and then they want to start to index it over time, similar to what they did with the minimum wage bill. They didn't take it all the way up right away. They made the adjustment, it's a good adjustment in the first year, and then they gradually took it the rest of the way, and now it is indexed, it's indexed, and it's every year there's an automatic increase, which would be nirvana in terms of what we're
They're just
doing.
staying flat for 13 years.
Yeah, well, yeah, and goes down in some cases.
So not to expect it this year, but.
Well, I don't think it'll happen before
Right.
Wednesday
I didn't
or
think
next
so either.
Tuesday. And it would, this is the year, but there is the opportunity that if something gets passed before you have to set the mill rate, you would have the opportunity to mitigate the impact on taxes by estimating a higher revenue from the state. So there is that opportunity, and that you won't do that until what?
The budget's
April.
The budget's got to pass, and then we can.
Right.
Then we can look at that and reduce the mill rate if we
The
need.
budget passes or any amendments to the budget, because it's technically not a budget year, would happen by the first week of May, because
Okay.
the session ends that Wednesday, the first week in May.
And the referendum is on the 21st, so you usually have, what, 10 days, 10 days, 10 or 14 days?
10 days, not 14, okay, 10
Yeah,
days.
we would be pretty close.
It would be a risk, though. I think that's what you're risk.
But I don't think it's something you can count on at this point and
It would be dangerous to do
consider
so,
in your
but-
deliberations, but it
Whose
is,
bill is it?
I think it's Duff and it's leadership. It's Marty Looney and Bob Duff. Yeah.
Okay. Does it have House support?
Don't know. I think it does. I've talked to the speaker. The speaker knows we have to do something on this. It's just, and then the question is, what's the governor going to allow to happen too? So, and we saw he got his veto pen out today. So. But he's also been lobbied heavily by CCM and Cost and us individually as chief elected officials. He knows the problem is there.
Last call. Questions for the Board of Selectmen? Town budget. Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So, before we move on to agenda item number 2, and that would be public forum, of course, I want to provide a brief recap of where we are in the town and school budgets for everybody here, virtually, watching eventually, and for my colleagues. And this is regarding the budgets, the revenue projection, and the anticipated mill rate and bonding requests. So, and correct me if anything is wrong, yell at me. That's why I prepare this, so I could just read it right off and hope it's right. Before we move, sorry, I already did that. The town and Board of Selectmen have requested an operating budget of $40,965,997 and a debt service budget request of $10,166,847, which results in a percentage budget increase of 6.15%. The Board of Education has requested an operating budget of $79,030,359, or a 6.25% increase over last year. The total combined town and school budget request is $130,163,203, or a 6.21% increase over last fiscal year. On the revenue side, projected non-tax revenue will increase $1,322,071, or about 16.25%. Several local non-tax revenue sources, as have already been explained by the First Selectman, are projected to increase Due to staffing increases or current trends, our anticipated educational cost sharing by just a little bit. Grant allocation is expected to increase by nearly $200,000, and other state grants are also expected to decrease $123,000. So that makes up that amount. Regarding the grand list, the total net taxable grand list before adjustments by the Board of Assessment Appeals increased approximately 0.77%. When the grand list is properly adjusted due to the impacts of items such as what are projected Board of Assessment Appeals court settlements, and our local supplemental and elderly tax relief programs, the grand list increase becomes 0.73%, increasing the mill rate another 0.31 or about 32%, just in the increase. With the 2025 adjusted grand list figure, based on the budgets and revenue projections presented tonight, the projected mill rate would be set at 28.95. Of course, you heard that could adjust for any reason that happens over the next few weeks, but it would go from 27.65 to 28.95, or a 4.72% increase over last year. We also heard about capital bond authorization requests. The Board of Education is requesting an amount of $1,830,609 for the following items: partial roof replacement at Adams Middle School, safety bollards at Adams, Calvin Lee, A.W. Cox, and Guilford Lakes, and architectural engineering services for future projects. On the town side, capital bond authorizations are requested on a 2-year cycle, and as there was a request last year, there is no request this year from the town. I want to take a moment to note that since these budgets were approved by their respective boards, something you did not hear tonight, and we're going to let everyone know, there was a recommended adjustment over the last few days, and this was since the budgets were approved by the Board of Selectmen and by the Board of Education. There was a recommended adjustment by our actuary, approved by the Board of Selectmen, I believe it was last week, to move the pension discount rate from 5.75% to 6%. And this adjustment is due to our recent historical returns and helps to not overburden current taxpayers with future obligations. I took that right out of the pension committee minutes. You could look at them. They're on there already. Well done to whoever's doing the minutes. The actuarially determined contribution for all 3 pension plans for fiscal year 26-27 would result in a total budget expenditure reduction of approximately $475,000. And that is allocated approximately $341,000 from the town budget and $134,000 from the Board of Education budget. Those are round numbers. They're very close. I didn't read the exact numbers, but that's close enough. Assuming the Board of Finance should accept this recommended and approved adjustment, which I would pretty much think it would, the increase in the town operating budget over the last year would lower to 6.9%. The Board of Education budget would lower to 6.07%, and the combined town and Board of Education budgets would lower to a 5.82% increase over last year. The mill rate increase over last year would lower to 4.31% from 4.72% that I just mentioned a little while ago. These adjustments in the pension line should be factored in our deliberations on Thursday night. With that, I'd like to enter into item number 2, public forum.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I don't mean to correct you.
Please, correct me.
The number that you mentioned in terms of the impact of the change in the assumption rate?
Will in fact lower the operating budget to that number, but it'll lower the overall town budget to 5.82% from the 6.15. I'll show it to you on a spreadsheet.
669.
Excuse me. What was the number?
Overall 5.2.
Hold on. I had the overall budget, all budgets,
Yep.
everything, both at 5.82.
Right.
And I had the Board of Selectmen budget.
If you combine operating budget, capital, and debt service.
Are you combining, what is it with debt service?
MJ, number, I think it's 6, it's around 6.15.
Okay. Right. So the operating budget for the town is 6.9, but with the debt service, it then drops to the number you just said. Okay.
6.15.
That does make sense. It's about the same proportion that it did before, so, yep.
And the Board of Education, just while we're on this, 6.07.
Sure. 6.07.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Everything's relative.
I wanted to mention, before we go into public forum, I brought that to, this board has been informed of that, so we all knew, but we wanted to make sure it got out to the public that this is what we're dealing, this is the numbers that we're, I wouldn't say dealing with, it's a good thing, but these are what we're working with, so we want to make sure everyone knew what we're going to be starting with most likely on Thursday night, so. Okay, now we'll go into public forum. I did note earlier, right when we started, that there were a couple of letters that were submitted. I'm happy to see that, because last year I don't think we got any. We already heard from John Phelan, so John, if you're still on, thank you. There are a couple of others that I'm going to read into record. And if I lose my voice, anybody else chime in to read, because they're on our onboard. So there is one that seemed to come just to me. So I'm going to read this one, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll take turns so I can get a break. I'll just go right down the line.
I'll go.
That'd be great. Actually, I'll do random picking. So this is a correspondence from Jill Olenti. I don't know if her address is on here. Oh, 50 Thornhill Road. Okay, got it. I'll paraphrase a little bit, but not too much, because I don't want to miss anything. She is writing to express her continued concerns regarding the current education budget, particularly the increases in administrator and athletic coach compensation at 8% while we cut resources to the students. The public messaging has emphasized rising health insurance costs as the primary driver of budget pressures. However, when reviewing the budget more closely, that explanation does not fully account for the financial decisions being proposed. While healthcare costs are certainly a factor, they do not tell the complete story of where increases are occurring or why cuts are being made in areas that are directly affecting students. When costs are rising, why are we including an 8% increase in salary for administrators while the teachers who have the most direct contact with students will receive a more reasonable 3.5% increase in salary? It is difficult to reconcile substantial pay increases at the administrative level with reductions that impact classroom instruction, student programming, and essential supports. Teachers who work most closely with students every day continue to face growing expectations with fewer resources. Meanwhile, meaningful evaluation of administrative structure, compensation growth, and academic coaching expenditures does not appear to be receiving the same scrutiny. She goes on to, she has spoken with others who feel that if reductions are necessary, positions such as instructional coaches should be evaluated before cuts are made to classroom resources. Many have expressed concern that coaching roles, while well-intended, do not consistently translate into measurable classroom value, particularly when compared to the direct impact of retaining teaching staff and student-facing supports. If difficult financial decisions must be made, they should prioritize protecting classroom instruction, student services, and the educators who deliver them. Before cutting programs that directly affect students, I urge the board to critically examine whether the district staffing model and compensation structures at the top are aligned with our educational priorities. Our budget reflects our values, and she respectfully asks that we take a closer look at the full picture and ensure that students in classrooms remain at the center of our financial decisions. I need a break. I've been doing a lot of talking. Amy, can you read the next one? I believe it's Regina Sullivan? Yeah, please.
Letter from Regina Sullivan. There's no address.
She's the president.
Yeah, yes.
You should say that.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say at the end. But she's the president of the Guilford Education Association. On behalf of the Guilford Education Association, I'm writing to share concern regarding the proposed education budget now under your review, particularly the impact on the district's teaching staff. We recognize the difficult fiscal environment the town is navigating and appreciate the complexity of the decisions before you. As you review the proposed budget, we believe it is important to formally reflect the concerns being raised by our educators regarding the juxtaposition of proposed reductions within the teachers unit alongside growth in the administrative unit. Specifically, the proposal includes extending one administrative position to a 12-month role, while also adding an additional administrator to the unit. This alignment of reductions and growth is understandably difficult for our members and many in the community to reconcile. We understand that the adjustment to the 12-month administrative position was negotiated as part of the administrative contract process. At the same time, teachers also negotiated contractual salary increases and are now facing reductions in force. Additionally, our members recall a similar budget pattern several years ago when assistant principal roles were moved from 10 to 12-month positions during a period when teaching positions were reduced. That history contributes to the current level of concern among educators. Our teachers remain directly responsible for daily student learning and support. Reductions in teaching staff have immediate and visible impacts on class size, student services, and program delivery, all of which carry both educational and community implications. The GEA remains committed to working collaboratively with district and town leadership as these challenging fiscal decisions move forward. We appreciate your careful review of the proposed budget and your considerations of this perspective.
Thank you, Amy.
Want me to go next?
Sure.
Go ahead, Megan.
All right, so this letter is from Dr. Brittany Stalsberg. She's at
Just make sure you speak up.
170 Yeah, 170. Oh, yeah. Okay, this letter is from Dr. Brittany Stalsberg at 170 Chestnut Grove. I am a voter and mother of 3 young children in Guilford schools. I am also the PTO grade representative at A.W. Cox for both kindergarten and first grade. I speak for my own family and many others in Guilford when I say we are greatly concerned about the budget for next year and oppose further cuts. We are so disappointed to see the lack of investment in instruction and special education resources. Our children need more, not fewer resources, and we hope that you can please preserve the budget we do have as is. Thank you for your important work and service to our community.
Thank you, Megan. Jeff.
Sure. This is from Tim Sperry. Broad Street. Guilford's historic structure. I'm writing you as chair of the Guilford Preservation Alliance. Guilford's historic structures are a significant part of the town's cultural, social, and economic character and make an important contribution to the town's prosperity. While many are protected by the Historic District Commission and its requirements, there are still many not protected. On August 1, 2005, the Board of Selectmen adopted a delay of demolition ordinance protecting properties identified as, quote, historically significant, unquote. A 90-day delay of demolition may be imposed for demolition of any building structure, parentheses, including the dismantling of the original documented structure, close parentheses, or part thereof exceeding 500 square feet in area. 680 historically significant Guilford buildings are included in this inventory. Over the years, we have lost a number of these historically significant buildings, some without the mandatory review brought on by the delay of demolition. There are a multitude of reasons for this happening, one of which is an overwhelmed town staff. One of the proposed remedies is the addition of a permit tech to the staff in Town Hall South to enable a proper review of building permits and renovation plans. We believe this position will help bring issues to light earlier and to trigger reviews of the plans with the idea of keeping as many of these older buildings from wholesale or major demolitions. It is our goal not to hinder homeowners in making their homes conform to their living desires, but to offer them more knowledge of the asset that they own. There may be ways to achieve the goals of preservation along with the desires of the homeowner. We would like for delay of demolition to be an early part of the process to allow for early interventions and to not force homeowners into a long, drawn-out process. We believe the permit tech will have the ability to flag these affected properties early in the process, enabling us to be, quote, before the fact, unquote, participants, rather than, quote, after the fact, unquote, observers. As preservationists, we strive to keep as much intact as possible, but that does not always happen. We had a smaller win with a recent project on Water Street. Elias Caldwell, a Guilford shipbuilder, had made a series of chalk drawings and calculations in the attic. The GPA was able to save these historical artifacts and remove them from the house prior to demolition of the attic. We are currently working with another homeowner on their renovation project brought about by a proper triggering of the delay of demolition. These are the wins. There are still many losses of valuable buildings or major parts of them. We encourage you to ensure that this request remains in the budget for fiscal year 26-27.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for reading and taking a little bit allowing my voice to come back. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Yes. Come on up.
Where would you like me to sit?
Right there.
Right here.
Yes, thank you.
Since I'm the lone wolf here.
Well, you never know. Someone might, you
My trigger response? Oh, there we go.
Name, address, and 3 minutes.
Okay, I do have some prepared information. John Jagelski, I live on Round Hill Road. Okay. Recently, I found my property tax bill from 1985. It was carbonless paper. The figures are hard to read, but it was $2,800. 3-bedroom raised ranch, 2 acres, half of which being wetlands. After reading about the budget for the fiscal year 26-27, I project that my future tax bill will be over $7,100 and will continue to grow until I move out of Guilford or pass away. The trajectory of this spending and taxation is not sustainable. This is fun. Yesterday, I received a notice in the mail from my Medicare supplemental insurance. My premium increased by 11.7%. An example, Xfinity raised their rates to me 11.4% for the last calendar year. And something simple as my credit card annual fee went from $99 to $249. Prices are going up everywhere. And what I intend to do? I have to trim expenses elsewhere. You know, everything is on the table. History of the Guilford budget. Fiscal year 2012 to 2013, the total budget was $71,800,000. Fiscal 2019 to 2020, $91,100,000. And now this budget is asking for $130,163,000. So between 2012 and 2026, the budget has gone up 81.2%. Between 2019 and 2026, the budget has gone up 42.8%. These costs are baked into the system and they don't disappear. These taxes affect everyone, seniors such as myself on fixed income, but also you're looking at the corporations in town. This is a double taxation on consumers. Businesses don't pay taxes. They take those taxes, they build it into their cost structure, and they raise the prices to the consumer. Okay. Big Y must cover its costs with higher prices. Bishop's Orchards must charge higher for its apples, and even commercial real estate corporations must charge higher rents to their tenants. I'm asking the board and other Guilford residents to accept prudence and to control the tax rate. There are I skipped a page. I am so sorry. Geez, this is terrible. What the heck. This is what happens when you're not prepared. The one thing that I noticed listening to tonight, I got a lot of new information. Number one is that the Board of Education is asking for $79 million for their budget for next year. That is the greater by $8 million of the entire budget for the year of 2013 and 2014. $8 million than what we funded the entire town just 14 years ago. Okay. I was in the business community. I was forced to do zero-based budgeting for my departments. We started with scratch and worked our way up as to what we could and could not afford, given a budget parameter that was dictated to us by our corporate offices. I am asking once again that the board go through the budget. I know everybody's very sincere about what they wish to have and what they wish to have for a quality of life in the town of Guilford. I have no complaints about my quality of life of Guilford. Okay, I have 3 children who went through town. 2 of them went through special education. They are all doing well and they are thriving. Okay, but I need to ask that the people of town listen to what is going on here. because if I take a look around here, I see more town employees than I see residents. There were more people who showed up for the Guilford mooring hearing than are showing up for here, and I imagine will show up more for than as compared to Thursday night as well. So I'm asking the people out in the public to be proactive, to be a part of the process, contact the members of the Board of Finance, and show them that everything needs to be discussed at least one more time. I thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else wishing to address the Board of Finance public forum? On Zoom? Anybody in the audience? John, you are brave.
You want more?
Okay, at this time, bless you, yes. I'd like to move forward with adjournment, but before I do that, a final reminder that budget workshop number 1 will be held in a hybrid virtual in-person format like tonight in this room, Thursday night, March 5th at 7:30 in the evening, not in the morning. Public forum is on the agenda before and after our workshop discussions. However, questions and discussion will only be between Board of Finance members and elected and/or appointed town and Board of Education officials. Should the Board of Finance not vote a budget forward to town meeting on Thursday night due to any number of circumstances, one of them could be weather, and it was almost tonight, but we got away with it. So budget workshop number 2, if we need it, will be held on Monday, March 9th, also at 7:30 p.m. in the same hybrid format as tonight. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.